I'm not sure if making a Jerry Maguire reference in 2025 is aging myself too much, but show me the money feels like it really applies to this Georgia Tech program right now.
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, folks? Welcome into Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. Look, I've been in this market for about a decade at this point. I grew up here, went to college in this city, and so, it's always fun. I may not be smart enough to have gotten into Georgia Tech, but I am smart enough to talk about Georgia Tech football. With me covering the Yellow Jackets on a daily basis alongside me is my co-host, Jarvis Davis. He's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years, has done so in radio and a plethora of other ways. We want to start off by saying thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast, and wherever you go to download them, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Anything less, and I wish all of your food tastes like a plain hot dog at the Varsity. And we all know, that you get that mouth, taste in your mouth at this point, honestly, when you start thinking about it. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Today on the show, we're going to get into, should Pat Narduzzi be fired for his latest statement? What is the biggest concern for the Yellow Jackets remaining regular season? But first, has Brent Key already done enough to earn a contract extension? Jarvis, this has been a topic that we've already touched on a little bit on this show, just knowing that, when you start talking about a guy who is in conversations with Penn State or within, their interest of your Penn States, of your Auburns, of your any top Power 4 open job right now, when you're in that conversation, it feels like you've done enough, if you're Brent Key, to earn some more money.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course he earned it. This is how the game works, because we even talked about on the previous pod about how, he's just got an extension December of 2024. And there are examples of coaches who have gotten an extension less than a year later. Right here in the conference, Rhett Lashley at SMU, they made him a top 10 paid coach in the top in the country, right? So when you think about it from that aspect, this is not anything that hasn't been done before. So for all those people who are in that boat, it's time to go ahead and jump off that bad boy, because this is the world that we live in. And I think that Brent Key, doubling and tripling down on about how he's at home. This is where he wants to be. So he should be rewarded for that. So, because at the end of the day, Caleb, if he was losing games, nobody would give a damn about having those conversations or quote unquote Penn State being interested in having a conversation with him, or Auburn being interested in having a conversation with him. So when you think about it from that aspect of it, these conversations mean he's doing a good job, and reportedly they are having those conversations. So, it's been done before. So take that out the equation. So this is something that's not out of the norm. And I think that when you have a guy like Rhett Lashley, who got a 2-year extension, you have a guy like Matt Rule out of Nebraska. He got a 2-year extension, and he ain't really doing much of nothing out there in Nebraska. Right. It just means they want him to stay there. So when you think about it from that aspect, you have a guy that you want to keep, and he's in conversations about other schools being interested. You do what you need to do to keep him. And I think that a 2-year extension for Brent Key around between $6 and $7 million annually makes a lot of sense.
Well, I want to go to this point, which is I pulled up Chad Bishop's article in the AJC from this past April when he wrote about the contract extension that Brent Key got in December. That it started off this season to make $4.15 million plus bonuses, then increased by $100,000 over the next, I believe it's 5 seasons. But starting off base salary without any, bonuses for how many wins you've got in the conference and what you do in the ACC championship game, all of those sorts of things. Before we even get there, 4.15 is insanely low. However, Jarvis, you could say 4.15 as a base salary and going up in increments is what you get for a 2024 season where you went 7-6. All right. You beat FSU to start the season. You then knocked off number 4 Miami towards the end of the season. You almost caught the Georgia Bulldogs in Athens at the end of the year. It took them 8 overtimes to pull that off. So with that type of season, you essentially get to go from interim head coach that we promoted to head coach, where we respect you to give you the job, but we really don't respect you to pay you that kind of money, because you're making the most money that you've probably made in your coaching career to that point just by taking the interim tag off. But you do all that, you go 7-6, you lose your bowl game, and so the university rewards you by, hey, we'll step you up in your salary.
Yeah.
By Brent Key going 8-0 this season before the NC State loss, already underpaid, criminally underpaid. I mean, Jarvis, before the show, you were going through the list of names. There is some insane salaries going around, especially with one guy we'll talk about at the end of the show.
Yeah, when you think about it, from you're looking at Kirk Ferentz, $7 million, Lance Leipold, $7.1 million, Kenny Dillingham, $7.2 million. Well, Jarvis, you got into a college playoff spot. Yeah, that's fine. The Georgia Tech is in position to be in the college football playoff as well. So, and his name is in conversations for being taken over a head coaching job at the quote unquote big time traditional powerhouse schools. The schools that have won national championship. I know Tech won one back in 1990. But you look talking about Auburn, they won one more recently, so they had the capabilities of doing that. That's what Brent Key is trying to build here. So you talk about being rewarded for doing a good job as an interim, having that tag removed. This is the business. When other teams are interested in your services, you reward that team, the school. If they want to keep you, you reward them, that said coach, by giving them a raise. That's just how the game works. And especially when you have Jimmy Sexton as your representation. I found that out too as well by doing my research. When you have Jimmy is as a representation, like, hey man, I'm talking to a lot of people. What's going on here? Hey Brent, how you want me to handle this? Because I'll be the bad guy. Just saying. 4.1 billion, that's a little low. That's a little low. So, and to be honest with you, I'm not asking for much. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, Ryan Alpert is listening to this show. Hopefully at some point he will be listening to this show. Hey, Ryan, how you doing, man? You know what I'm saying? Hey, my name's Jarvis. Nice to meet you. But, if you are in a space where you having all this, you're garnering all this tension to your school for football purposes, eyeballs, and in the conference incentivizes eyeballs. So, you get more money when eyeballs are on you. And Georgia Tech proved that last year, with the big games that they won, like the game you talk about, going to the 8 overtimes against Georgia down there in Athens. All of that stuff matters, man. So, hey, here's what I'm saying. Ryan, listen to you, boy. You know what I'm saying? I think between 6 and 7 million is fair. You know what I'm saying? Give him a 2-year extension, bump that salary up to the annual salary up to about between 6 and 7 million, and you good. And make sure coaching staff, because I like Buster. Buster's a nice play caller, so you want to keep him around as well. So hey, give him a little bit more money so he can take care of his folks, take care of him, and I promise you, this thing gonna continue to roll.
And I think, to your point about AD Ryan Alpert, he's already shown the money to the fans by having that Tennessee game that we talked about,
Sure.
getting, keeping it at Bobby Dodd Stadium instead of taking the payday and having it go played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Like, so he's already rewarded the fans for doing their part. You would think it's just got to be automatic at this point to reward your head coach who has gotten you to this point, and, has shown his ability. Look, we're going to have plenty of time over the course of the next few weeks and months to get into the recruiting aspects of all these things. But if there is one thing to be excited about when it comes to the Yellow Jackets, it's been the recruiting aspect that Brent Key has not only talked the talk as far as won the games that he's needed to up until this point, but also bringing in the new talent so that the winning continues. It feels just automatic at this point that it should be an absolute no-brainer. You pay the man. I think you're right, Jarvis. Like, you nearly double the man's current salary, but that just gets him into the same conversation as a lot of the same guys that he is coaching as good as, if not better than, especially in the ACC. Like, if you're going to be top of the ACC, you've got to reward your head coach for that. Now, does it happen right now in November? Probably not. Those things will get finalized at the end of the season, most likely, because Brent Key, strikes me as a person that, even with Jimmy Sexton being his agent, who is going to be that guy to get every single penny that he can, he's not going to want to be dealing with that sort of thing during the season. I don't think it should be any major concern. It's just one that this is one more thing to take care of as you're continuing to build out this Yellow Jackets program that's looking really impressive. However, Jarvis, we do have to say there are still games left in the season. Like, as much as Brent Key, I'm sure, wants to get paid, deserves to get paid, there are still games left on the schedule that he's got to focus on. And we need to get into what the biggest concern for Georgia Tech's remaining regular season schedule is. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. I mean, between the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there is absolutely nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets to those games can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use GameTime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices. And here's this part: no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. That's rare these days. It feels like you're constantly having to deal with whether or not it's going to be bumped up another $10 to $15. But when it comes to GameTime, that's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. You pull up GameTime, just a couple of taps, you get amazing deals, just like going to see the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets for as low as $25. The app is super simple. You could see the exact view of your seat before you even buy them. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download GameTime today. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. It's fun to be at the top, especially when you're joining things right at the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we know the reason why we're #1 sports podcast, and that's because you joined the network. I mean, come on.
You keep doing this, Jarvis.
Yes. Hey, man, I'm your biggest cheerleader, Caleb. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm everyone's biggest cheerleader. I love to lift my people up, man. That's what I do. That's why I'm here on this earth. You know what I'm saying?
I appreciate it. I feel like I don't deserve it, but I'm gonna take it. And I'm not used to being a super arrogant guy, but I mean, when I joined the crew And within the first week, the people who matter say, hey, you're number one. All right, I'll run with it. It's a fun time to be a part of the Locked On Network. With the Yellow Jackets, who, speaking of number one, they have one loss on the season. Something that you and I have spoken about has caused some people to completely jump ship and feel like season's over. But we obviously know far from the case. When it comes to this remaining schedule, you got a couple of ACC opponents, which are important. We want to emphasize the point that winning your conference games do matter. Maybe that's not the only thing that matters, because we'll get into that later from a particular head coach who had some surprising things to say. But having your two ACC opponents on your schedule left, and then Georgia to wrap things out, certainly is going to, depend on how things end up in the college football playoffs, Jarvis. But as far as this remaining regular season schedule, what kind of stands out to you as like, this is a real concern?
There's a saying that people use when it comes to playing this game of football, and I've always abided by it, and I will firmly believe it, and I will use it here. Health is wealth, my friend. And it starts at the top with the quarterback, Haynes King. That man has, I think, rushed for, in 3 games this year, he's had over 20 carries. That scares me, especially when you have a guy like Malachi Hosley and Jamal Haynes. And we had the conversation on the previous pod about who I feel, and I think you would agree that Malachi Hosley needs to start getting a boatload of he should be sharing the load a little bit more when it comes to who gets the rock on a game in and game out basis. So I feel like my biggest concern is making sure guys like Haynes King remains healthy, and you getting your 2 DBs, Jai Gilmore, and Amari Harvey back, getting those guys healthy. When we were last week, when I was down there in the flats, Coach Key kind of intimated, said, hey, those guys were on the field today. So they were out there on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming that more than likely those guys are going to return. And then when you talk about the back end of your defense and that experience that those guys bring to the field, and that's going to do nothing but bolster your defense. So for me, it has to be remaining healthy as they go down this stretch. And it starts with the Heisman candidate, Haynes King.
Yeah, no, Jarvis, I know we're going to spend, some time this week, obviously, talking about the upcoming opponent for Georgia Tech. And you even mentioned, I think, on the last podcast that we had, of you can never overlook your opponent, even when it's a team like Boston College that has one win and has looked pretty pathetic, for a most of the season, I would say. However, that's for the team inside the locker room to do, not us. I will 100% overlook Boston College and look towards that Pitt game. Like, I really do think it's how does Tech's defense hold up against Pitt's offense? Because I don't think they've necessarily done anything to like blow anyone out of the water, but you've certainly seen the moments where like specifically their game against Boston College. I mean, they can get the offense going and score a lot of points. And when they play defenses that are thin, an opponent just like NC State, they scored 53 points. I mean, 53 points. You think the shootout that Georgia Tech and NC State had was impressive. But I think, what Pitt has done, especially recently, as they've been on what I believe it's like a 5 or 6 game winning streak ever since they lost to Louisville. I think what that offense done is been just nothing short of impressive. And I think coming off of the NC State loss, where we saw a defense that couldn't rush to the passer, couldn't get stops because of the depth concerns that you just mentioned, Jarvis.
Yeah.
I think, that is the game, and that is the two sides of the ball. I have no concerns whatsoever with, the health of Haynes King, sure, but he's shown that it doesn't matter if, his shoulder looks practically broken. Like, that man's going to be out there on the field, especially in the games that matter. And so I have no real issue with Haynes King and this offense being able to score points, Buster Faulkner finding ways for this team to score points. But if your defense cannot get stops, cannot get off the field, surely depending on what happens with Pitt and Notre Dame this upcoming weekend is, going to impact that as well. Is Pitt feeling themselves after a win over Notre Dame, or is Pitt feeling slighted after, coming up short to a team on a big stage where they're going to get all the attention with College Game Day and the likes? And so for that, that is the game that I feel like I keep looking at going, do I believe that Brent Key is going to have this team prepared? Absolutely. But once the action starts unfolding, once guys are having to make those split-second decisions, how do they fare, especially if they're not healthy?
Yeah, and Pitt is the number one scoring offense in the ACC. I mean, those are the facts of the case.
Yeah.
And Georgia's not too far behind at third, but yeah, that's a good reason to be concerned because me, man, like playing on the defensive line, it's all about getting off blocks, and they just could not do that against the Wolfpack. And like I said, we had that conversation about how that game turned out, and when you think about where they are and how quickly CJ Bailey was getting the ball out of his hands, and because guys were open, they were open, as the old folks say. It just makes you think that getting those guys back, I'm going to be optimistic and say, hey, if you get those guys back, that's going to help you. In that particular arena, is going to give you a little bit more time to be able to get off those blocks and put some pressure on the quarterback. Obviously, the defensive coordinator can send a little bit more pressure, right? He can manufacture some pressure. That makes sense in today's world, sure. Especially when you have an offense that puts up so many points, and they're going to try to sling that bad boy all around the yard. So for me, I look at it from an aspect of getting your DBs back into the fold, and being able to cover a little bit better, being able to be a little bit more aggressive. Hey, I can play a little bit more man coverage instead of playing that soft zone that really took me out in our last showing. So yeah, I think that's going to be the thing. I understand your concern, but I really think that getting those guys on the back end of this defense back helps you tremendously.
Well, and it also helps when, like, the very thing that I'm concerned about, I do think that Pitt's offensive line maybe not the greatest at protecting this true freshman that what is it, Heinstall? Mason Heinstall? Yeah, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. But this guy, like, I always say that
one game at a time, Caleb. You know what I'm saying? I'll learn how to pronounce his name next week.
There we go. But like when you start looking at true freshmen, what do you know about them? They tend to be less patient in the pocket. They tend to be a little more reactionary. And as I've said before, I think that sacks are a quarterback stat. And Heinschel's given up 16 sacks, in not even a full season of games. He came in, I think it was after the NC State game that he started. So knowing that he gives up a lot of sacks, holds onto the ball a little too long, I think that kind of primes Georgia Tech's defense, Jordan Vanderberg and the likes to step up and make a difference there. It's just one of those things that, similar to what we saw with CJ Bailey, when a guy starts getting in a groove and literally can be on one leg, if you're not getting stopped, if you're not getting off the field, you're only making it worse for yourself. because then you're more gassed. It's going to be colder come that time of the year, especially because it's already hit Atlanta. We're feeling the effects. There was some snow out in the air on Monday, and so for all of that, it's just one of those things that I think you have to pay attention to. But bringing up Pitt, Jarvis, I think we should end the show talking about something that maybe Pat Narduzzi said that could be a fireable offense. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps everything exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Maybe you're putting some action in on the Hawks and the Clippers as the Hawks are out on a West Coast road trip, and you want to get in on that action. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, Jarvis, I am not sure that I ever expected to be talking about this particular next subject, which is Pat Narduzzi of Pitt being asked about whether their next game is a must win. And Jarvis, this comes in college football, right? Not the NFL.
Yeah.
College football, where we're constantly saying every game matters. This is what Pat Narduzzi decided to say.
Do you feel like this is a must-win for this team when it comes to something?
Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game. I'm glad you brought that up. It's not an ACC game. I gladly get beat 103 or 110 to 10 in that game. They can put 100 up on us as long as we win the next two after that. But again, our focus is on Notre Dame and getting as many wins as we can.
I don't understand him. Well, let me just say this. If I'm Jim Phillips, I'm trying to figure out a way to find this dude. I'm looking for a loophole in the rules. Can I fine him for negligence against the conference? This is ridiculous. Like we've had conversations on this pod, and we just been doing this pod for a week now. By the way, if you haven't downloaded those podcasts, man, go ahead and do that, man. Listen to it the only way it works. Stop playing. You get stuck in traffic right now. So yeah, just go ahead and download all of them. You drive from Forsyth all the way to the city every day. Man, that's almost 2 hours of driving, man. Come on. Don't get caught up. But I think that when you look at how this conference is perceived, they never get the benefit of the doubt, right? You had multiple schools in the initial college ball playoff ranking, but a couple of those schools have lost, and for a fact they're about to kick them folks almost out of this doggone ranking if they want to. They're just looking for a reason. They're looking for a reason to get 8 SEC teams into the playoffs or 6. I was just, being a little exaggerating there. But when you think about it from that aspect, I just don't understand why Pat Narduzzi would say something like that and then end it with a reasonable answer.
Yeah.
We're focused on Notre Dame and we're going to try to win as many games as we can. Which one is it? Are you trying to win as many games as possible, or you don't care if you get blown out 100-0? And he's played Notre Dame 4 times since he's been at Pitt, and he hasn't won one. And I think only one of those games, Caleb, have been by a single score. So he's been getting his butt kicked. So those numbers weren't too far off as to what he's been used to.
Well, that's the thing, Jarvis. I looked at the last 2 times that Notre Dame and Pitt played each other. It's a combined score of 103 to 10. That's the actual 56-7, or 56-3 and 48-7. where's the awareness, Pat? You know?
Well, maybe he is aware. He knows exactly
Really?
that wasn't a score he was just randomly throwing out. Like, hey,
Yeah.
man, this is what it is for me. Sure, I can't beat Notre Dame.
And here's my thing. It's one of those, it's setting expectations. I
Oh
want to
man,
ask
there you go.
Pat of like, do you understand how headlines work? Do you understand how the kids who you are trying to recruit interact with social media when they see this headline of, I don't care if we lose 103-10. I'm worried about our conference opponents. Are you sure that the kids coming to Pitt are just worried about winning the ACC championship, or are they interested in being in the college football playoff and trying to win a national championship? Because you got Brent Key, head coach of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who he just went on local radio. We talked about it recently and said, I'm not just talking about ACC championships as a reason to stay here, as a reason to build this program. He wants national championship. He has those expectations, something that, Georgia Tech clearly hasn't done since 1990. And you think, why is Pat Narduzzi not in the same thought process, at least just from a marketing standpoint, of talking up his team, of talking up his conference, and understanding that there is no coach in the SEC or the Big Ten who is saying, all we're concerned about is winning the SEC or the Big Ten. Like, no, none of Ohio State isn't just saying, hey guys, we just want to win the Big Ten.
They're dropping
Georgia's not
about 20
saying,
mil to try to get a national championship. That's what they're into. Yeah, they're in that type of stuff.
it's like that's the same kind of talk if you're Illinois, if you're Rutgers, like that's the talk of, well, we've got to set the expectations because we got to be realistic here, and if you're Pat and you're Pitt, Pat and Pitt, wow, say that back to back together. And you're being realistic about the season that you are having, it's within reach. And so it's just wild to me to fix it at the end, but to say such a preposterous thing right out the gate and set himself up, because Brent Key and every other coach in the ACC, when they go to recruit, is going to go, oh, you're thinking about Pitt? I mean,
why would you want to go there? They're just trying to win conference games. They're trying to get to a bowl game. That's all. Yeah. And we taking it a step further, last year, Pitt had the second lowest viewership in the conference last year. So you are what you think, man. You talk about managing expectations and setting expectations, like, so as a man thinketh, so is he. If I can get a little biblical on my
right.
Georgia
Hey, there we go.
fan base, you know what I'm
Hey,
saying?
my
Atlanta,
thoughts
baby.
were like that.
Home of churches and the strip clubs, baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, choose you today. I used to lean more towards the adult establishments back in the day, but now I'm a family man and I lean more toward the church. Don't laugh at me like that.
Hey,
I'm just keep a straight face when I start talking, man.
I'm just thinking of how this is going to get clipped, and I'm gonna have to answer some questions to Jeff that I don't necessarily want to. We were doing so well for a minute.
I know, man. Yep. We were 6 episodes in, bro. We were doing fine. And then
Beard left.
Pat brought it up. Blame Pat Narduzzi.
There we go. Well, that's what Jarvis, you said. You should, should the man be fined in conference? I'm like, should the man be fired? Like that, and I will say this: should he be fired right now? No. This thought process is a fireable offense of I'm only concerned about winning my conference. I'm not even looking at the thought of winning a championship, because that is something that is going to kill you in recruiting. And I don't know how that man goes in his locker room on Saturday and faces Marcus Freeman, because I know what Marcus Freeman is talking about, because that man was literally playing for a national championship earlier this year.
Yes, for sure.
It's wild to me that this has happened. But it couldn't have come at a more perfect time, honestly, for Brent Key after the comments that he made. We're going to have a lot more to get into over the course of this week, as, like I said, we get ready for Georgia Tech to take on Boston College. We were also are going to be hearing from the College Football Playoff Committee. Do they mess it up again, or do they get it right this time? That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page and anywhere you listen to podcasts for free. Follow the show on social media. We're on TikTok, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. Locked On Georgia Tech is the place to find us. Follow Jarvis on social media at JarvisD90. I'm at ATL Johnson 18. Thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Donna break down the most interesting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.